Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the BRICKYARD podcast. We're here to break it all down, preview the NBA Finals, Dallas Mavericks, Boston Celtics, also going over who will be the best in the West, both in the AFC, NFC, and all around the NFL. And then also we'll be previewing and talking about Jake Paul, Mike Tyson being postponed, and a whole lot more.
Yeah, and a whole lot more, but we have a massive event in sports this week, and that is the NBA Finals. It is here. The hype is real right now. We have either Jason Tatum or Luka Doncic is going to win their first championship. We're going to go over and talk about the road because I'm somewhat of a history buff on the show. You are somewhat of a history buff on the show, and we'll go over how these teams were built, how they came to be, and then also some interesting situations of how the Celtics came to be, you know, from fleecing the Nets to the Lakers and the 76ers to not drafting them. But let's start out in the middle of that story, and that's going to be the playoff run. And the Dallas Mavericks on the West side kind of went through a little bit of a gauntlet, you'd say. A lot of people are saying their road is harder. So you go up against the Clippers and you go up against Kawhi for one game. And then after that, you're going up against George Paul, who does not show up in big games or clutch moments. You're going up against James Harden, who does not show up in big games or clutch moments. And they were able to get through that series. And then after that, playing a very young Oklahoma City Thunder team, which actually probably gave them the most trouble of any other team in the playoffs. I know the Clippers blew them out in the first game, but Dallas has lost every single game won until the Timberwolves series of Luka Doncic's young career there. And then they're able to go ahead, beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then those damn Timberwolves. We went from Anthony Edwards is Michael Jordan's son to this is the best defense seen in NBA history, Charles Barkley, and he has the audacity to call other people who didn't play basketball casuals after naming the Timberwolves the best defense in the NBA that he had ever seen. And then Luka's like, I'm going to drop 20 in a quarter, and the Timberwolves are going to drop 19. What the hell happened to the Timberwolves? Why win game 4 and go back to Minnesota if you're going to go back home just to get your ass absolutely handed to you? They're talking about it on the broadcast that they're like, this is the most shots that Rudy Gobert has taken in a first quarter. In a first quarter, Rudy Gobert. And they tried to get the ball to him more. And then Rudy Gobert was like, I've already taken so many shots that he didn't realize they were passing him the ball. And it kept going right through his hands. Like, this is why you can't have Rudy Gobert on your team, because he simply cannot do anything on offense in the playoffs. When you try and give him the ball, when he has a wide open dunk with a midget on him, he's like, oh, ball goes right through my hands and out of bounds, and it's a turnover. And then Luka decides to hit a bunch of logo threes, and that was a wrap.
That was a wrap, and you did a good job summarizing it, but I'll summarize it even shorter. The first round was the cursed Clippers. Yes, we all know the history of the Clippers. Your history buffs on the show, we have talked about the cursed Clippers before. That is a real thing. The next time, they went to daycare and went out against SGA, Chet Holmgren, and the boys over in Oklahoma City. They took care of business. They played a good game. They moved on. And then they faced the Timberwolves. And for part of the playoffs, I was super high on them. I'm like, you know what? This looks like a championship team. And you know what? Maybe in an alternate reality, they are. But definitely not in this reality. Because they went through the Nuggets, and I'm like, well, if they can beat the defending champions, then surely they're going to show up against the Dallas Mavericks, against Luka, Kyrie, and the rest of the boys in Dallas. But then game 5 came. They're down 3-1, and turns out they forgot to get off the bus. They shot 32% from the field in the first half. By the time the first half was over, they were already down by 25 points. One of the most pathetic closeout game performances I have ever seen in my time watching basketball. Karl Anthony Towns, we talked about him all throughout the playoffs, standing up in big moments. Where was he in game 5 of the Western Conference Finals? And then Anthony Edwards, the man of the hour, who everyone was appointing to be the face of the league. Where was he? The whole series, he shot under 30% from the field. That's going to get it done. Everyone wants to talk about Jason Tatum, and we're going to talk about him in a few minutes. But how can you be the face of the league when you're shooting under 30% from the field? The Timberwolves, who I've always been giving loads of shit to for my entire existence. I cut them some slack, and here they are now, back to disappoint me. Congratulations, Timberwolves. Back to abysmalness.
And it's your fault because you kind of got soft on the Timberwolves here. You're like, okay, I like what they did with the Nuggets. And then looking back, Jamal Murray was kind of injured throughout the whole playoffs. He had a calf injury, which is the same injury Kristaps Porzingis had, and he has not played in the month of May. It is June now, and Kristaps Porzingis did not play in the month of May. That's the injury Jamal Murray was dealing with, and it took them 7 games to beat Denver. Denver did not have a bench. Michael Malone had some bizarre coaching decisions like playing KCP, Christian Brown, a bunch of other nameless players with Jokic, and then putting Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, and Jamal Murray all on the bench at the same time in that game, which was the pivotal turning point when the Timberwolves started to go on the run. And then you talk about Anthony Edwards, who just did not show up in the series, and people are like trying to give the excuse that he was tired. Really? He was tired when he was the one before the series that's like, yeah, that's what I do. I lock people down. I lock down Jamal Murray. People don't know about my defense, so I'm going to go out here and lock down Kyrie Irving. You don't need to challenge Kyrie Irving or ask Kyrie Irving or give him any more incentive to show up, because you know what he was doing? Being passive the first half versus the Clippers, being passive the first half versus the Thunder, and then showing up. As soon as Anthony Edwards says that, Kyrie Irving was like, all right, young man, I accept your challenge. And you know what I'm going to do? Drop 30 every game. I'm going to come out and be aggressive when you already have Luka to worry about. And then you want to talk about being tired in the fourth quarter, shooting 30% of the field. I was worried about Rudy Gobert in this series. I was worried about Karl Anthony Towns in the series, which is why I picked the Dallas Mavericks to win the series, because I'm like, Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know. You had a good run, kind of broke out of your shell, but Anthony Edwards is the one that worries me. But you're going to be tired in this series and then not show up when you also have Mike Conley on your team. You also have Naz Reid. And the funny thing was with this series is this is a show of honesty. This is an alternative media show. We're not going to lie to you and be like, oh, I think after 3 games of the Timberwolves losing winnable games that were 1-possession games, 2 of them at home, and then we're going to sit here and try and lie to you and say, like, actually, I think the Timberwolves could be the first team to come back from 0-3 and go back home and win when Luka has been playing better on the road and he seems like he relishes the moment to rub it in the opposing fans' face. Like, just the whole dialogue after the Timberwolves won 1 game, and then people are like, I don't know. I think they could come back from being down 0-3. Like, if Boston didn't do it last year, sorry, Anthony Edwards, you're not Jason Tatum. You're not coming back and beating Luka. Jason Tatum was dunking on LeBron in his rookie year. You couldn't even dunk on Blake Lively or Luka Doncic, who, oh yeah, can't dunk. Or he can dunk, but he can't jump. He's not LeBron James.
Yeah, I think the media completely overhyped Anthony Edwards in this series, and he came crashing and burning because of it. So the Mavericks, we talk about their playoff run, but where did they come before this? You saw them, they acquired PJ Washington in the trade deadline, has been a massive addition for him. He had a massive Western Conference run. And then up to that point, I remember we were talking about this 2 years ago when they went and traded for Kyrie Irving. A lot of people in the media were not very big fans of this move. Part of the people in that trade included Spencer Dinwiddie, a couple of picks. We can pull up the trade as well. But the big part of this move, and the reason why they've made it to this finals to here, is obviously the progression of Luka Doncic, but also the addition of Kyrie Irving and him returning to form from where he was in Cleveland with all the teams that he's bounced around to.
Yeah, and it's the addition of Kyrie Irving, and oh my God, how could you give up Spencer Dinwiddie? And everyone was freaking out about how it wouldn't work. They're like, these are 2 ball-dominant players. It won't work when you literally saw 2 ball-dominant players with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade similar play styles with Luka. And then you also saw two ball dominant players with LeBron James and Kyrie Irving work in Cleveland. You know how it works. You have two players who can go out there and get 40 on a given night, and then one plays one stretch and the other one goes to the bench. And then you have another player who can play another stretch. And then whoever is on in the fourth quarter can take over the game. And then Kyrie Irving has had a lot of personal growth that he's been able to work through some tough times he was going through when he was in Boston. He was dealing with some family issues where he's dealing with the death of his grandfather and he wasn't really in the right headspace, and then dealt with some injuries with the Nets. But Kyrie Irving is a Kevin Durant type of player where if you put Kyrie Irving on the Portland Trailblazers, are they going to the conference championship in some of the years that Dame brought them there? Probably not. But if you put him with someone like Luka, he has the ability to, if he can just go out there and ball, turn into an inferno on the court, similarly to where Kevin Durant has not been able to lead his own team to the finals. Kyrie Irving hasn't really been able to lead his own team, and he was able to accept that role with Luka, be the 1B there, where it's not I'm the 2, it's whoever is on this night, and they have that trust there. And then you also have with this Dallas Mavericks teams, you get Kyrie Irving with some picks and Spencer Dinwiddie. You trade away the last juicy booty in Grant Williams to the Hornets, and you acquire PJ Washington, players like Derrick Jones Jr. You get Gafford on your team as well as part of that trade. You bench Hardaway Jr., and then you get someone like Derek Lively in the draft Blake Lively in the draft this year, who's been a rookie and made a massive impact for you. But you know, the biggest part to the Dallas Mavericks' success, not being able to draft Trae Young or DeAndre Ayton. The Trae Young, Luka Doncic trade is the trade that's the reason why they are here, and then being able to move on from Brunson and replace him with Kyrie Irving. And I think Jalen Brunson is a good player, but is he Kyrie? Probably not.
No, that's a good point. That swap, ultimately putting him in Dallas, and then mentioning that Kyrie Irving trade. I did pull up the Kyrie Irving trade because I think it's funny to go over now. Him and Markieff Morris went to Dallas. You want to know who the Mavericks gave up?
They got Markieff Morris too.
They did get Markieff
Congratulations.
Morris, one of the Morris brothers. We mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie. We mentioned the first overall pick in 2029 and Dorian Finney-Smith.
That's it.
That's what they gave up for Kyrie Irving.
The Nets should not be allowed to make trades anymore because this is ridiculous, because we just talked about how the Dallas Mavericks got here because they traded Luka Doncic for Trae Young, and that's working out for the Dallas Mavericks at this point. You trade Spencer Dinwiddie for Kyrie Irving. You trade Grant Williams for Gafford and PJ Washington. And then the Boston Celtics. How did they get here? Oh, wait, trading with the Brooklyn Nets. Why are the Nets allowed to make trades? I mean, if you want to talk about a team who has made the most championship contenders, who has been a part of creating some of the best teams in the league, you know who it is? The Brooklyn Nets. Because what did the Celtics do? Fleece the Brooklyn Nets. They're like, do you want a retired Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett?
And Jason Terry.
And Jason Terry. And then we're like, we'll take back Marshawn Brooks, Keith Bogans, and give us all of your first round draft picks for, I don't know, the next decade. And then we'll turn that into Marcus Smart. We'll turn that into Kelly Olynyk. We'll turn that into Jaylen Brown. And we'll turn that into Jason freaking Tatum.
And also, funny enough, the draft pick that ended up becoming that pick that they had later, the 2018 pick, was a trade that ended up getting them Kyrie as well. So they got Kyrie, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, all of these players thanks to the Brooklyn Nets. So Brooklyn, honestly, you know who won the NBA Finals this year?
Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn Nets did. But then it goes further than that, because we saw Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They've been in the finals, or at least the Eastern Conference Finals, 6 of the last 8 years. Their run, the only thing they haven't done is quite break through in winning that title. But to this point now, not only have they contributed, right? The Celtics getting both of these players in back-to-back years at number 3. We can go over another alternate scenario in a second. But
yeah,
also the addition of Derek White, who they ended up getting for Romeo Langford. Kristaps Porzingis, who ended up getting for
Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart. And then Drew Holiday, who they ended up getting for basically Robert Williams. So,
And Malcolm Brogdon as well.
And Malcolm Brogdon as well. So basically replacing part of their bench with three players who have been electric for them in the playoffs and help them get to the number 1 seed.
Yeah, help them get to the number 1 seed as well. And the Celtics have the best 6 player rotation here. And then you have players like Luke Cornett off the bench. He gives you some hustle points. And then Peyton Pritchard, kind of like, I don't know, I was like another white guy who shoots 30, but he's actually been pretty good. And then Sam Hauser hit 198 threes. He hasn't been as good or to that level in the NBA playoffs, but he's someone who, even though he's in a shooting slump right now, he's competed on defense at least. And then you always have Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, or Jason Tatum on the floor there. And then Kristaps Porzingis is able to stretch the floor there, bring away a key center. And then they're the best 3-point shooting in the league, where they had, I believe, the most players in NBA history hit over 100 threes ever.
Yeah.
They have a net rating offensively that puts them up there with teams like the Golden State Warriors or the Chicago Bulls, which gives them that net rating. And honestly, for this team, the biggest addition by subtraction, I hate to say it, Boston fans, but trading Marcus Smart, team spokesman Marcus Smart, who sometimes felt like he was the man on that team. I can't count how many times, as someone who watches most of the Celtics games and watches all of their playoffs games, where Marcus Smart would just have these moments where you're ripping your hair out. Why is he taking the ball? Why is he taking the shot right now? And I felt like he would lose us games at some point, and then his body kind of just started to break down. He tried to be the team spokesman because he had the seniority, because he was there first, but just trading him and replacing him with Drew Holiday, and then replacing Robert Williams with Kristaps Porzingis, who, I don't know, people are like, oh, we got rid of Robert Williams, there's our rim protection, but Porzingis is always hurt. Well, I hate to break it to you, Robert Williams was also always hurt, so it's kind of nothing new there. And then you replace him. Now you have 6 guys on your team who can go for 7 threes on a given night, who can go for 30 on a given night, where we're seeing Derek White take over games, who is traded for Romeo Langford. We're seeing Drew Holiday take advantage of some of his matchups and have big plays defensively now. And then we're seeing Jaylen Brown take advantage of having the second best defender on him, where the best perimeter defender is always on Tatum. So Jaylen Brown will seem like he's having better games than Tatum sometimes, and people wonder why. It's like, because Jason Tatum has the defense's best defender on him. Jaylen Brown does not. With Miami, Caleb Martin was on Jason Tatum, and then Jaylen Brown was cooking Tyler Herro.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then another person we forgot to mention with the Celtics development, right? We saw them earlier in their prime with Al Horford, right? Al Horford was a big figure for him early on. He left. He went to the Sixers. He went to the Thunder. And ultimately, they retained his services again by trading away Kemba Walker. Yeah. So another part of these trades that have been hyper successful, and the reason why they've been in the place they have, drafting well, finessing teams in trades. Both teams have done an excellent job constructing them to this point.
Yeah, Kemba Walker's probably in like China right now with DeMarcus Cousins. Shout out to Boogie Cousins for winning Taiwan Finals MVP. Shout out to you.
Shout out to
congrats.
Shout out to Boogie Cousins.
Yeah, shout out to Boogie Cousins. But as we went over it, the Nets basically built both of these rosters where they facilitate the Kyrie Irving trade to Dallas. And at a point, the NBA has to step in at some point, because this is getting bad. And Phoenix is going to be there at some point with everything they've traded for Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. I feel like Phoenix will definitely be there at some point. But what is going on in Brooklyn right now? Because Boston is now set up to, not only did they beat the Brooklyn Nets team that had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in a playoffs. It was the closest sweep in NBA history, as Chris Broussard put it. But now the Celtics are in a position where they have Brad Stevens, who has manipulated the salary cap, manipulated all of those assets, and he's kind of been everything we didn't like about Danny Ainge. He saw all of those mistakes, his frustrations as a head coach, and was like, I can fix this team. Now we have probably the best put together team where we have 6 players who can go for 30 on a given night. Like Al Horford hit 7 threes in a playoff game, going up against the Dallas Mavericks that have Luka and Kyrie, but it doesn't feel like once you go down the roster, it's like after Luka, you probably take Jason Tatum, then you take Kyrie Irving, then you take Jaylen Brown, then you take Derek White, then you take Drew Holiday, then you take Kristaps Porzingis, and then you're like, okay, if we're talking about playoff experience, would I rather have someone like Al Horford, or would I rather have PJ Washington, who we did see fall into a little bit of a slump in that Minnesota Timberwolves series, shooting from 3?
Yeah. If you go tit for tat with the top 10 players, the Celtics have probably 7 of the top 10 players on the team. So as we go to preview this series, right, obviously Celtics have home court advantage because they have the best record in the NBA. So the series, I believe, will start in Boston.
Yeah, Thursday.
So just previewing the series here, the way I see it, the Celtics have the better team. The Mavericks have 2 killers on this team who are capable of stealing a game from anybody. So in my eyes, I think there's a game that Luka steals and there's a game that Kyrie steals, but ultimately the Celtics win in 7. Or Celtics win in 6, I mean. I think both teams are excellent, but the way the Celtics are built front to back, I think Joe Mazzulla is an underrated head coach, and he's learned a lot from year 1 to year 2. Jason Tatum, another guy who's propelling himself into being one of the best players in the league. I think 6 games for the Celtics is totally fair. I think I'm being very generous to the Mavericks, but Celtics just have the better team all around. They can do everything.
Yeah, Celtics have the better team all around, and it's tough because I feel like the Mavericks are a hard team to pick against because you have the Luka factor and you have the Kyrie Irving factor. But at the same time, I've seen Jason Tatum go up against players like Joel Embiid, go up against players like Giannis, and I've seen him in those big moments when he's facing adversity drop 50 in an elimination game. And people talk about how he doesn't show up in the clutch, which just isn't true. And then the Celtics also have a tendency to play down to their competition, and people are thinking they're going to be shocked when they play the Dallas Mavericks because it's not going to be as easy and it's going to be a massive jump than where they were before. But Jason Tatum has been to the NBA Finals, and you can tell this year that this man is on a mission. He is one of the only players to average 25, 5, 5, 1, and 1. The only other players to do that in 80 playoff games are Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade. That is the conversation, and those are the players that Jason Tatum is there. And you've seen this season that he's taken his passing to another level where he's not just looking to shoot, he's actually being able to get his teammates involved. And the Celtics getting to the finals versus the Golden State Warriors and being close when they have that massive first game, but there's no shame in losing to Steph Curry. And I feel like that's really what's going to propel the Celtics in the series, because Kyrie Irving is 0-10 versus the Boston Celtics ever since he stomped on the logo. The Celtics have blown the Mavericks out, actually, in all 4 of their last 4 meetings. I don't know if that's when the Mavericks started to play defense, but this is a matchup nightmare for Dallas, because with Minnesota, it's easier to stop Anthony Edwards when you have Rudy Gobert just sitting at the rim there. But with Kristaps Porzingis, people don't realize, since he hasn't been on the team in the playoff run, this is a guy who can get 20 in his sleep, and it's easy for him. This is someone who adds extra pressure on the rim. And then Jason Tatum is an elite defender. Jaylen Brown is also an elite defender, and Derek White and Drew Holiday are also both really good defenders. And what they're going to do is, I don't think they're necessarily going to double Luka, but they're not going to give him those easy passes to 3-point shooters. And I think even with Luka going off in these games, it's like, I'm just not sure how Dallas is going to be able to stop Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday and Derek White and Porzingis, because people talk about, well, the Celtics can't stop Kyrie or Luka. It's a wrap there. It's like, well, there's not really a good matchup for Jason Tatum. There's not really a good matchup for Jaylen Brown. And both of those players are also going to be able to thrive when the Celtics have better players to match up against those two Maverick stars in Kyrie and Luka to at least bother them and wear them down as the series goes on. Because I think Drew Holiday versus Kyrie Irving is going to be one of the most fun matchups to watch materialize.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my mindset there as well. It's like the Celtics have been perpetually the better defensive team, not just this year, but over the last several years. And Luka's not necessarily known for being a great defender. He's been great in these playoffs, but consistently hasn't been the best defender. Who is he going to match up against? Kyrie Irving is also not a historically great defender. So you look at all these players on the Celtics, their starting five, and then you look at the Mavericks, right? You have Gafford and you have PJ Washington and the rest of these guys here. Not necessarily a great defensive team. So although I do think that they can steal 2 games, I just don't think that they can go a full 7-game series and beat them 4 times.
Yeah, and the Celtics are the more experienced team. The Mavericks have Kyrie Irving, but it's not like all the pressure is on Dallas to win the series. And I think Boston is on a mission to win that title because they've heard all the noise. They're like, okay, Jason Tatum, in your rookie year, you got to the conference finals and lost to LeBron James. How dare you? Even though you've been busting the 76ers and Joel Embiid, who doesn't get as much slander as Jason Tatum does for some reason for all of his playoff woes. You know, how dare you make the playoffs 6 out of your first 8 years and be ahead of schedule here. It's just a little bit ridiculous how people talk about the Celtics. And this is the time where he's 26 years old. We've seen everything where LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Jordan, like all these players didn't win until they were 27. Kobe did it when he was with, Shaquille O'Neal. Typically, you have to be
Most dominant player of all time.
Most dominant player of all time. And Shaq was 27, 28 at that time, and he hadn't won a title yet. So he was ready to go out there and win an NBA championship. But I think the Celtics team is ready. I think they're hungry, and they are built to go up against any team in the NBA. I just don't think matchup-wise, the Dallas Mavericks are really suited to go up against the Celtics. Call me crazy. You can say, oh, well, they can't stop Luka. They can't stop Kyrie Irving. Well, you can't stop Jason Tatum. You can't stop Jaylen Brown. And, oh, yeah, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Al Horford, or Porzingis will all be on a given night. So even if Tatum has an off night, Brown will at least be on. And if one of those 2 players will have an off night, the thing with the Celtics is you're always going to have 2 players that have it going on a given night.
Yeah. So where do you think, how many games do you think this goes? We both have the Celtics winning.
Yeah.
Do you think it goes 7, 6?
I think it goes 6. If it goes 7, I actually think the Mavericks would win, but I think the Celtics have to win in 6. And the weird thing with both of these teams is Luka has been better on the road, and the Celtics haven't been, they get maligned for being shaky at home, but they lost game 2 at home versus Miami, where Miami hit, I don't know, the 3rd most threes in NBA history. In a game. So that's the game they lost there. And then they had a bad second game versus Cleveland. But I do think I think they split 1-1 in Boston. And I think Boston's able to win a game or 2 in Dallas and then win game 5 and 6. Because the thing with Dallas is you came down in Minnesota to the last possession twice. This Boston team is not the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Mike Conley is not as good as Drew Holiday. Jaden McDaniels is not as good as Derek White. Anthony Edwards is not as good as Jason Tatum. And Karl Anthony Towns is not as good as Jaylen Brown. And in a playoff scenario, who would I rather have, Rudy Gobert or Kristaps Porzingis offensively? Give me Kristaps. And then, oh yeah, Al Horford can get as hot as Naz Reid did in some of those games.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And I would say, too, the thing with the Mavericks versus the Celtics is the only way to beat Boston is you have to be able to outshoot them, and I don't think Dallas can.
No, I don't think they can either. What's also crazy, I know we talked about how the Nets resurrected both of these teams, but we had talked about briefly how the way the Celtics built this team was getting Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in back-to-back drafts, both 3rd overall. And the 4 players that were taken above them, right? And both of these players also going via the Nets trade, right? Getting Jaylen Brown number 3, and the players in that draft ahead of him were Ben Simmons to the Sixers and Brandon Ingram. right? So Sixers, Lakers. And then the following year, same draft order, same people. We had Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball. So we were talking about this off air. There's an alternative universe where either Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, or both of them are either both or either one of them are in Philadelphia or LA with either LeBron or Joel Embiid potentially, or on the Pelicans if they make that Anthony Davis trade still.
Yeah, I think if they go to the Lakers, they would have gone to the Pelicans, which is the funniest thing. If Boston wins the championship, is this was perfectly preventable. I don't know if Magic Johnson didn't have that one year where he's like, I want to resurrect the Lakers. I want to be a part of basketball operations. And I realized I don't want to do this. And then he talked himself into drafting Lonzo Ball instead of Jason Tatum, who's a top 5 player in the NBA right now. And then you also have the 76ers who, oh yeah, trust the process, man. Like, man, the process, like, just trust me, bro. It's going to work. Like, well, it didn't work with Brett Brown. It did not work with Doc Rivers. And it's not going that well currently because Joel Embiid is the only one there. You signed Tobias Harris instead of Jimmy Butler. I mean, you have Tyrese Maxey on that team. That's really your only saving grace. But outside of those players, it's like, what are we actually doing? In Philadelphia, we expect you to be stupid. We expect mediocrity. We expect bad draft picks out of the Philadelphia 76ers because, frankly, it's Philadelphia. I was at a beach one time, and we're in a parking lot. And a little kid gets out of a van. He sees some trash in the parking lot. It was kind of at a trashy beach. And then he groans to himself and he goes, ugh. It's just like Philadelphia. Even little kids don't like Philadelphia and they know it's a filthy city and we expect this from you. But LA, to see Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, and I know people try and argue like, oh, well, Brandon Ingram, could be on the level of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Brandon Ingram in the playoffs this year sucked. He was awful. Every time he took a shot, I cringed when I saw it. And I think with Tatum and Brown being drafted by the Lakers, it would have been a part of that Anthony Davis trade. And you would have seen Tatum and Brown in a Pelicans uniform, which at least would have saved Lakers fans the pain of seeing Boston win Banner 18 and pass them in championships once again in the NBA ranks as far as how many championships, who's the greatest franchise here. You wouldn't have seen Boston be perpetually good instead of being good with LeBron, winning a championship where we could potentially see Tatum and Brown win maybe 2, maybe 3 if they win the championship this year. So for Lakers fans, you at least could have sent them to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis instead of Boston being there, sitting with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum for the next 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll rebuttal with is, do you think that they still trade both of them? Because let's remember that they traded Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, a bunch of draft picks. I think they had the draft rights for DeAndre Hunter that they traded there as well. They traded pretty much their entire roster outside of Kyle Kuzma and Alex Caruso in that trade. Do you think that, like, because both of them were good pretty much right away. Jason Tatum, I believe, was first team all rookie, and then he kind of immediately erupted there. Same goes with Jaylen Brown. Do you think that, like, one of them would be good enough where they could package one of these players to get Anthony Davis and they pair these 3 together in LA? Or do you think that just the Lakers and how they've made trades with just about everybody the last decade, they're going to give up everybody?
Yeah, the thing is with Boston is the LA Lakers didn't have this guy named Brad Stevens as their head coach, which I think played a big role in the development of the 2 J's in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And that team was set up a lot better for success. And you have the Celtics franchise there, where with the Lakers, I don't necessarily think they would have kept both of them because they traded both of the people that they drafted at those picks in Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. And I think it would have been a similar situation where the coach there wouldn't necessarily, I think it was Luke Walton at the time, or Mike Brown.
Sounds about right.
And they still weren't a playoff team. And I don't think they would have been as successful and made a deep playoff run in LA. And I think maybe you trade one of them, but I still think both of them would have ended up on the Pelicans.
I mean, let's look back at those Lakers teams before LeBron. The team right before him, right? Brandon Ingram, what happened to him? In LA, he was kind of a disappointment. He leaves, he goes to New Orleans. He's been better in New Orleans, let's be honest there. And then Julius Randle was a shame in LA. He goes to New York. He's better. He was an all-star. And then same goes with Lonzo Ball. Before he was hurt, he was doing a lot better in New Orleans and also in Chicago. So a lot of the people who left ended up doing better than in LA. So I think that's a fine point.
Yeah.
Then we look at the Sixers. Okay. They had Ben Simmons, who he is one of the biggest NBA mysteries of all time. Let's be honest here. He was a defensive-minded point guard who they were comparing to Magic Johnson because he was tall.
He's tall. Yeah.
He was tall and he could pass well. Never understood that compliment, but all right. Couldn't score. And then, so he had like a 5-year run where he was an all-star and he was a good player overall. And then I don't know what has happened since then.
Trae Young snatched his soul. I don't know.
Trae Young just ruined that.
Well, it's kind of
man.
like the Kardashian Jenner curse. I don't know, because Ben Simmons, as much as he doesn't play, he's still making a lot of money. He's still making appearances at the Met Gala. He's still living an NBA lifestyle, and that's kind of the dream. If you are a NBA player, you're dating superstar models, and then you're also at the Met Gala, and you don't even have to play. Like, good for him, to be honest. I don't know if he's the biggest thief in NBA history. I don't know if he's just committed highway robbery, but he's doing something right.
He's found a way to quiet quit in the NBA and still make a bunch of money. So congrats to him. And then Markelle Fultz, another guy. This is just as we make fun of the NBA for being stupid many times, or at least the NBA analysts, who I can honestly defend NFL analysts with them not being nearly as stupid as NBA analysts, especially when it comes to draft talk. Markelle Fultz was immediate, like, oh yeah, he's the number 1 overall pick. Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
Danny Ainge's like, I don't know if I like that. Let's trade back with the Sixers. We'll take Jason Tatum at number 3. You guys can take Markelle Fultz. We already know what the Lakers are going to do. Markelle Fultz was a disaster in Philadelphia. He went to Orlando, and he's been a fine role player, I guess is the best you can call him. What a bust he was. So
he plays.
He played. Hey, you know what? He plays in the NBA.
He does.
He does better than, you know what? We don't play in the NBA, so who are we, right? The Sixers, if they had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they had paired them inevitably with Joel Embiid, who to that point was injured for most of his career. He ends up getting healthy. He gets paired with Ben Simmons. Very awkward pairing from the start. Didn't work out. Never made it past the second round. He has Jaylen Brown. He has Jason Tatum. He potentially also has Jimmy Butler as well. Probably couldn't afford Tobias Harris. Oh, no. But that team surely could have beaten that Raptors team. With Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, and Jimmy Butler, and JJ Redick, that team beats the Raptors.
Oh, yeah. Definitely don't forget about good old JJ there. And I don't necessarily know if they would have Jimmy Butler on that team, but I think if you have Tatum, Brown, and Embiid that year, I definitely think you would be able to beat the Toronto Raptors that year, because their point guard is Kyle Lowry, and then he's like a fine point guard. He like hustles. Good for him. You had the ancient relic of Marc Gasol in that series. You had the ancient relic of Serge Ibaka, and then you had Pascal Siakam, who is not the Pascal Siakam we see today in Indiana. You have OG Anunoby, who wasn't the OG Anunoby who saw Ice Spice on the sideline and is like, God damn, I better bust my ass this game and play as hard as I've ever played in my life. And then you have Kawhi, who hits one of the craziest shots in the NBA to win that game. So I do think the Sixers would have at least gone past the second round, because they wouldn't have needed Joel Embiid to get past the second round at this point, because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown would have already gotten them past the second round on their own without the matter of Joel Embiid's health, because then you can also rest Joel Embiid in the regular season, because the reason why Joel Embiid isn't healthy outside of his large frame right now as a tall basketball player who came in with injury issues. Typically, if you're a tall center, that doesn't tend to get better as your NBA career progresses. But Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum credit to them because what they do is pretty much play every single regular season game. They don't load manage, and Jason Tatum has never missed an NBA playoff game. Jaylen Brown had one injury in the playoffs, but other than that, he hasn't missed any NBA playoff games either. So that definitely would have at least gotten them past the second round by now, where Joel Embiid is just sitting there in the second round, and he's sitting there in the first round right now, where he lost to Trae Young in the second round, and now he loses to Jalen Brunson in the first round, and Tom Thibodeau, and Josh Hart,
Dante DiVincenzo.
Dante DiVincenzo, who turned into Steph Curry in that round.
Yeah, he sure did. So the Sixers, obviously, we didn't trust the process, and I don't think, looking back, that's a regret for us.
No, I never trust the process. It was always so stupid. It's like Brett Brown. Like, you got swept by the Celtics, who were supposed to be in a rebuild, and they swept you in the playoffs. Like, the whole process is nonsense. The process has failed. The process does not work right now. And then also, something that doesn't work right now, Mike Tyson's abs.
Yeah. So we've been avid critics of the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight that was set to come out in July on Netflix. First boxing event on Netflix. But Mike Tyson, 58-year-old Mike Tyson, yes, I'll repeat that again, 58-year-old Mike Tyson, had to delay it because he was having ulcer flare-ups. Now, if you're not a doctor, ulcer flare-ups basically translate to old man ab pain. Yes, you heard that right. Look up ulcer flare-up, old man ab pain, abdominal pain from Mike Tyson. Because, again, he is how old?
59.
Close enough, 58. How many times have we said this fight made no sense for Jake Paul? Jake Paul is somebody who is trying to legitimize his boxing career. He said his goal is to inevitably be in the Boxing Hall of Fame, and yet he's beating up on Mike Tyson. And so when I heard this news, I'm like, okay, well, this is already a lost fight. I don't know why they're doing this. So I look back at Mike Tyson's career 20 years ago when he fought last, because, again, he's
58
years old. The last time he fought was 2005. You want to know who was on the charts in the top 10 the last time Mike Tyson fought anybody in the boxing world? Will Smith.
Will Smith?
Will Smith was charted 6th on the charts back when Big Willie Style was still making music. This was before Hancock and before
Big Willie,
before I Am Legend and all these other movies that he ended up doing and giving up on his rapping career.
Good
he
choice.
was still in there. 2005 was the last time, June 10th to be exact. And over the last 10 fights of Mike Tyson's career, he was 5-5.
Yeah.
He's beating up on a sub 500 old man who is
58
years old. Now is your opportunity. I say all this to say this. Now is your opportunity, as old man has his ulcer flare-ups translate to old man ab pain. Now is your chance to say, maybe I shouldn't fight Mike Tyson. Maybe I'll let my brother fight him. That is my thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Tyson should be fighting anyone else besides senior citizens. We saw him have that, I think it was like an exhibition with Roy Jones Jr. here, but Jake Paul does not have anything to gain because guess what? No one wants to see Mike Tyson get beat up. And then also, if he loses, you get beat up by a 58-year-old old man who has ab pain right now and has to be literally wheeled around in a wheelchair right now because he has, what was it, old man flare-up?
Old man flare-up.
Yeah. And then also, no one wants to see Mike Tyson get knocked out and then him wake up speaking Mandarin, talking about Godzilla. Like, no one wants to see the full-on Mike Tyson brain breaking. We want to see Mike Tyson, what's left of his brain, his beautiful mind there. We want to see him be able to continue to go on podcasts, host his own podcast, and we want to be able to continue to see him talk about things like psychedelics. We want to see him talk about mushrooms. We want to hear him talk about life and give us lessons. No one wants to see him get knocked into full-on CTE mic and get up off the mat talking in Mandarin. This is just something we don't want to see. And I think Jake Paul should focus on fighting people his age, fighting people on his experience level. And I get what Jake Paul's initial pitch was when he's like, most boxers' first 20 fights are against garbage opponents and no one knows who they are. I'm actually fighting people who have been in front of crowds, who have experience in the arena, who have star power there. And maybe the UFC is a different sport, but at least they kind of have experience being in front of a crowd, which can really drain someone there. And it's like, okay, I get your initial pitch. And then he starts fighting Anderson Silva, who's also someone who's in his 40s. And now potentially he's pivoting from this to fighting his brother Logan Paul, who's, on steroids because he's in the WWE there. And no one holds that much muscle when they train cardio that much. So Logan and Jake potentially swap out Mike Tyson, and maybe all of this build up for this Netflix event. So you already have the tickets, and now it's going to be Jake versus Logan Paul. Or we could have maybe our good friend of the show, Le'Veon Bell, step in there, because Le'Veon Bell says Jake Paul can't handle my athleticism. Same thing Nate Robinson said. Good luck, Le'Veon. I know you just got a big boxing win this weekend, and AB was rapping to open up for it, get you hyped up. You both have a whole lot of money. Congratulations. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you could, sell out AT&T Stadium, though, which is the problem.
Well, you know who else couldn't handle Le'Veon Bell's athleticism? The Chiefs, the Bucks, the Steelers, all of the teams. Oh, the Ravens. Let's remember he was on the Ravens. All of those teams who are like, oh, his athleticism, maybe too much for us. Maybe we should let him go.
Yeah.
He's too much of a distraction.
Some may say he's still looking for those gaps today.
He's still looking for those gaps today, apparently. Le'Veon Bell, I wish you luck. If anybody else needs a paycheck, I know Adrian Peterson. He always needs a paycheck. I think he played about 325 years in the NFL. So I'm sure he could use a paycheck. Frank Gore, friend of the show, I'm sure he could use a paycheck as well.
Yeah.
You want to beat up on some old athletes? How about we find somebody who's maybe 20 years younger? So maybe Adrian Peterson or Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, I heard Chael Sonnen thrown around there, and Chael Sonnen is probably he was the one who popularized and UFC fighters talking on the mic. He was really good at talking trash, and he brought the wrestler persona to the UFC. And then Conor McGregor took that to the next level. So I think if you throw in someone like Chael Sonnen, even though he has a boxing match scheduled in Brazil with Anderson Silva, but I'm glad this fight with Mike Tyson isn't happening in July, and hopefully Jake Paul can find another fighter. Him and KSI, if it had beef, maybe throw KSI in there. Maybe we have that rematch with Tommy Fury. The problem is you have to find someone who's old enough that Jake Paul can pick on, who's less skilled with them, but you also have to find someone with the personality and star power, because this was an event that they are charging $2 million for VIP tickets for.
That's insane.
It's insane. Who's going to pay for that? Like, anyone who has that much money to spend is not going to be spending it on, oh my God, I want to meet Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Like, no one who's that rich is going to spend that much money.
Now, if we had a time machine and we could go back and he could fight 1994 Mike Tyson, back when he wasn't 58 years old, then maybe then.
Old man ab pain. Yeah.
Yeah, who doesn't have old man ab pain. Maybe then that would be a hell of a fight. I would pay to see that fight. Maybe not $2 million fight, but I would still pay to, I'd certainly pay to see that fight.
That'd be a fight you pay $50 for the pay-per-view, or it's on Netflix. So you get a Netflix subscription and then you turn it on in the first round. You're like, oh, Jake Paul is dead. Because if he fought Mike Tyson in his prime, Jake Paul would be dead.
Yes, he would be dead.
He would have no chance. And he's like, oh, I fought a 58-year-old. Maybe Floyd Mayweather jumps in this. I know he fought Logan and was, holding him up in that fight.
Yeah. Or maybe, who was that like old painter who had like that one ear he cut off for his girlfriend? I think it was like Van Gogh or some shit. Maybe he turns into Van Gogh because, 90s Mike Tyson really liked the taste of somebody's ear. So maybe that was what it was.
Yeah, I know some people were mentioning, well, after you fight Tyson, are you going to fight Joe Biden after this? So maybe we could see Jake Paul versus Joe Biden.
Yeah, that would be a fight. That would be maybe not on Netflix. Maybe we could just see that, like, I don't know. Maybe that could be at one of the debates. But
yeah, it could be at one of the debates.
That could be pretty cool, I would say.
Yeah, I think, because it'd be funny, like, and if they like I'm not saying it'd be funny if Trump went to jail. Maybe he's going to go to jail, maybe not, but like if at the debate instead of Trump being there if he's in jail, like, well, we're going to sub in Shane Gillis to just do his Trump impersonation.
I'd be here for that.
So maybe we can find if someone played Mike Tyson in a movie, they can replace him. Denzel, maybe.
Denzel, he can
Yeah.
do just about anything.
There we go.
Well, it's time we pivot to the NFL, the main point of our podcast, just the way we do our shows week in and week out. Last week we did the AFC and NFC North.
Yeah.
So today, as I don my Cardinals sweatshirt or whatever you want to call this, we are donning the AFC and NFC West, going over Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos, and I'm not going to list the rest.
Yeah, you don't need to list all the teams there. And then we also, with the NFL, we're going to be previewing those divisions, but we also had some wild signings.
We sure did.
And I'll start with the worst one first because this is somewhat of a Bills podcast on this show. But the Bills were like, you know what? We lost our entire team this offseason, and we had to cut everyone because Josh Allen's contract is kicking in here. Had to trade away Stephon Diggs. So you know what we should do here? Sign a gold medalist wrestler who hasn't played football.
That's genius. Isn't he like a 3-time gold medalist too?
Yeah, he's like a 3-time gold medalist, but he's a wrestler who did not play football in college, has not played football. Maybe he played football in high school or college, but you're signing a wrestler to be like, oh, maybe we could turn this guy into a defensive lineman. Sean McDermott, what a genius as a defensive head coach. We're so far ahead of the curve. We're going to revolutionize the NFL. It's just like when Chris Hogan, like he was someone who had played rugby before. He turned into an NFL player, but I don't know. You're trying to turn a wrestler into a defensive lineman. It just smells of desperation.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? And I know that this was a little bit more severe because he had played in the NFL before, but when the Jaguars signed Tim Tebow after he hadn't been in the league for 8 years and he could play tight end, a position he never played in high school, college, or the NFL, and it just felt like Urban Meyer was doing a favor for him. This maybe is not to that same level of patheticness, but at least to a level of, what are you doing? Because this guy has never played in the NFL, and never played college, probably played high school a decade before, and he's going to be your defensive tackle. Like, chances are he's not going to make it out of training camp, but God forbid he does. He's going to be the guy that's going to be fighting for you behind, like I just don't see how this pans out. This does seem desperate. This is a team that has no cap space, and their team fell apart. Now they're relying on Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. I just don't think this isn't going to pan out well for the boys in blue.
Yeah, I'm trying to see now if he actually has experience playing football.
It doesn't look like he does from what
I don't think so.
From what I had read.
Yeah,
but he
Bill's
is a gold
Gable
medalist.
Stevenson switches from pro wrestling to football. Did The Rock switch from football to wrestling, or did he switch from wrestling to football? Because typically you start out and you realize, wow, football's really hard. Why don't I take a bunch of steroids and use my star power to wrestle?
Same with Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. Cody
Yeah.
Rhodes, I think same thing.
Yeah.
And then, so that happened. And then the Miami Dolphins, you're up next because you're also in the AFC East. Jaylen Waddle signs a massive deal. You now have 2 of the highest paid receivers in the league on the same team. And then the first thing you thought when the Miami Dolphins signed Jaylen Waddle, outside of congratulations, Jaylen Waddle, you earned a lot of money, and I'll never down a player for that. But I will talk about an organization's thought process when you sign him and you're like,
what happens with Tua? Because that was what I thought immediately. When Jaylen Waddle signed, I thought first, as you mentioned, congratulations, Jaylen Waddle. Deserving of his money. I believe he's making $27 million per year now, along with Tyreek Hill's $30+ million per year.
Woo.
But I immediately thought, I'm like, okay, well, if they're paying 2 wide receivers top wide receiver money, this must mean that they're going to draft a quarterback soon enough, because Tua's about to be making $50 million allegedly, according to multiple sources. So if they don't want to pay Tua, then naturally am I crazy here to have that projection that that's potentially what they're going to do, as they are paying just about everybody now?
Yeah, I think the problem is they're gonna try and find some way to pay Tua, and they're gonna try and manipulate the salary cap somehow where they pay Tua and you make the contract work. But like the idea of paying Tua $50 million, and Tua, if I'm him, I go out there and try and get as much money as possible. But if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I'm like, this guy cannot play in the cold. This guy can't play up against winning franchises, and he looks completely clueless against the best team in the best teams in the NFL, a la in Kansas City versus the Chiefs, where that was kind of a winnable game for Miami. When you talk about how explosive this offense is, where you talk about having the fastest players in the league, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Jaylen Waddle, you have Devon A-Train, you have Raheem Mostert, and the list goes on. They were so good that they let Mike Gesicki walk to New England. And then after that, you're like, oh, wait, we can't use our weapons because Tua can't do anything in the cold, and you have people comparing him to Drew Brees, and I kind of get the comparison, but at the same time, it's like when a guy hasn't won a playoff game, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around paying him that much money.
Yeah, because the players who are making $50 million are Joe Burrow, who has made it to a Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, who has made it to an AFC title game, Lamar Jackson, who has made it to an AFC title game, Jalen Hurts, who has made it to a Super Bowl. Like, all these players have had playoff success. The only exception, I believe, is Justin Herbert, who hasn't quite had that success, but at least he has the potential to do so.
Well, look at the
But
talent.
for Tua, and also he's in LA, but also for Tua, not only has he played in the playoffs and played poorly in the playoffs, but each year you see him start out hot and then crumble down the stretch, whether he either falls apart because of his issues with injury or the team just genuinely just lackluster the last stretch of the season.
Yeah.
Why would that be a person you put your faith in to pay $50 million to? They're going to pay him $35 million, maybe, but 50, that's a little much.
Yeah, and Tua's one like bad hit away from having a tough conversation to be like, is football worth that anymore when I've banged my brain around my head this many times?
He had 3 concussions in 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, which is definitely terrifying for a player. So for Tua, I think he's someone where it's like he's definitely replaceable, and someone will go out there and pay him that much money. I think the Broncos or the Saints would love to pay Tua not just $50 million, $60 million. So I could see either of those teams paying him, but it'll be interesting to see what the Dolphins do from here. Congratulations, Jaylen Waddle, for getting paid. Hopefully you can stay healthy now that you have all the money to spend on excess personal training and diet. But then we have Justin Jefferson, who gets paid $140 million, 83, I believe, up front of that contract. So they're trying to front load it so they have cap space down the road. And everyone is freaking out about this. But I'm like, wait a minute. You let Kirk Cousins go because you were planning on drafting a quarterback, and then you brought in the guy from The Sixth Sense who's seeing dead people and ghosts in the backfield, and Sam Darnold, and then you have Duck Hodges on your team, and then I'm like, wait a minute, we're not paying a quarterback for, I don't know, 4 years, and we may not even pay JJ McCarthy, and Justin Jefferson is about 10 yards better than any other receiver's yards per game in NFL history. And Justin Jefferson has the potential to be the greatest receiver in NFL history. And I'm not saying he's there yet, but I think you can definitely make a case that he's the best receiver in the league. So I'm like, if you're not paying your quarterback for a certain amount of time, it's like, okay, I get it. You're paying Justin Jefferson. By the time that contract rolls up, then you might pay a quarterback, but we don't know if they're going to be paying a quarterback, because is it going to be the kid from Sixth Sense as your quarterback? Is it going to be JJ McCarthy? Is JJ McCarthy even good? Is he Zach Wilson? Is he Brock Purdy? We don't know yet. And then we also have, Kevin Stefanski as the head coach. How long is he going to be there? But I'm like, we have B-Flow coaching up the defense, and we already drafted some studs there. So I'm like, Vikings, solid team at drafting players. Like, I really don't think it's a big deal, and Justin Jefferson deserved every penny of that.
He deserved every single penny. He's going to be making $35 million a year. He is now the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, surpassing Nick Bosa. And like you mentioned here, all of his stats point to him being the best wide receiver of all time through the first 4 years of his career.
Yeah.
And that's including him missing games last year. He missed 6 games last year. He still had 1,000 yards. Absolute ridiculousness. He literally carried them in that game against the Bills a few years ago with an absolutely spectacular performance. And like I said, he is probably the most valuable non-quarterback on an offensive team in the NFL, arguably. Yeah. And if you want to say, like, say what you will about Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase, those are the other guys that I could put in that same echelons. And then Cooper Kupp that 1 year. But Justin Jefferson absolutely deserves this money. Congratulations to him. $35 million, 110 guaranteed. Bravo.
Yeah, congrats to Justin Jefferson. And if you're wondering why the Minnesota Vikings paid him that much money, just put on, that Post Malone song. You put on your headphones, and without you, what do I do? Without Justin Jefferson, you say, "Oh, I fall apart." Literally. That's where the Vikings would be without Justin Jefferson. So you may be like, oh, the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions may run the division for the next few years. So guess what? We still want to sell tickets and we want to sell jerseys because a lot of people who aren't Vikings fans are going to buy Justin Jefferson jerseys. So good, at least business move for the Minnesota Vikings. But we are also here to predict every single game for every single team in the AFC West. How this is going to work is I'll pick 2 games. You'll pick 2 games, and before that, we'll give our synopsis for how we feel about each of these teams, and then we'll go through our division standing at the end of it. So I think to set the tone for this, we should start with the Denver Broncos, because when we talk about how we feel with the Denver Broncos, and I know you have strong feelings to fuel the fire, they have not won with the quarterback they have drafted outside of Tim Tebow since John Elway. Tim Tebow is the only quarterback that they've won a playoff game that they have drafted.
That's crazy.
But how do you feel about the Broncos?
Oh, how do I feel about the Broncos? Let's get started. Okay. You want to talk about some of the worst teams in the league next year? We have the Patriots, right? How good is Drake May? We have the Panthers. How good is Bryce Young? And then we have the Denver Broncos. Not only do they have the Chiefs in their division, summary on the Kansas City Chiefs, they've won not one but 2 straight Super Bowls. They have the Chargers, who I know you're not a big Chargers fan, but at least they have John Harbaugh and they have Justin Herbert, so they are still better than the Broncos. And then they have the Raiders, who we expect, and you'll expect when you predict them, that they'll be at least a gritty team. And then we have the Denver Broncos, who have the worst quarterback situation in the NFL with Jarrett Stidham, Bo Nix, and Zach Wilson. Running backs in that division, worst in the NFL. They have Javonte Williams, who's been hurt throughout his career. Then they have Cortland Sutton, no other receivers besides him. Their tight end positions, worst in the NFL. Their offensive line, bad. Their defense, bad. The only player that I cannot insult in this is Pat Surtain. No disrespect to Pat Surtain, but every other person on the Broncos sucks. And this team is going to be the worst team in the NFL.
So you're saying you think Jim Harbaugh, who hasn't won a Super Bowl, is better than Sean Payton, who has won a Super Bowl?
The difference is, look at this roster. Look at the quarterbacks. You cannot look me in the face and say that Bo Nix is better than Justin Herbert, because that's insane.
He's better at golf than Justin Herbert, okay?
He's better. Well, he's going to do a lot of golfing this year, so I hope he's happy.
He's better at being drafted old than Justin Herbert.
He's probably old enough to be Justin Herbert's father, so I hope so.
Yeah. But yeah, the Denver Broncos. So clearly you have strong feelings about them. So let's dive right into their schedule here. They open it up versus their nemesis and rival, the Seattle Seahawks, which they'll forever be tied with that franchise after the Russell Wilson trade. It's the reason why they have $50 million in dead cap outside of paying Russell Wilson too early. Who do you have in that one?
Well, let's look at the quarterback situation. Who do I feel about? Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, or Bo Nix, or Geno Smith? Well, Geno Smith's better than them. The Seahawks will win this game just like they did the last time. Let me get the Seahawks.
Okay, so they start out the season 0-1, and then they go back home to Denver. This is going to be at 4:25, and it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. I think it's going to be Russ's revenge. Steelers country, let's weld. He'd have in that game.
I think that this is going to be a cherry on top. This is a guy, look, I understand, Zach. I understand that Russell Wilson was not very good in his time in Denver. Let's not be mistaken. The year before, he was terrible. This past year, he was just extremely average. But the way that they disrespected that man on the way out, benching him the last 6 weeks of the season, demanding that he waived $35 million of his contract, and then cutting him for an $85 million dead cap hit, this is going to be icing on the cake. I think the Steelers win this game, and the Broncos embarrass themselves.
Yeah, disgraceful. Talking about how Russell Wilson needs to stop kissing babies, Sean Payton. Drew Brees kissed more babies than any other quarterback in the NFL. What are you talking about?
Well documented.
So, Steelers Nation, let's weld down the Broncos Stadium in Mile High. And then the Broncos go to Tampa Bay at 1 o'clock, September the 22nd, to face off against Baker Mayfield and the new look Buccaneers.
The new look Buccaneers, indeed. Well, if I remember, they kept Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield, which were both better than any player on the Broncos. So therefore, I see the Broncos falling to 0-3 there.
0-3. Okay, so you go to Tampa, you lose there. But, oh, wait, you have another game on the road. And not only is it still on the East Coast, but you're going off to play that bad man, Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he'll just be bad this season. We'll see. In East Rutherford, New Jersey.
Well, that Jets defense is going to hold them to -0 points potentially.
-0.
-0. Literally an impossible number. We're going to see it there at the first time. I still think Aaron Rodgers, whether he is literally hopping on one leg or maybe he has to crawl on all fours, he is still better than any of the quarterback situation on the Broncos. Give me the Jets.
Yeah, give you the Jets in that game. And honestly, the NFL, for I feel like humor's sake, safeties should be -2 instead of +2 because I want to see a team with a negative score at some point.
We got to see it.
Some teams deserve it. And then you go back home and you're thinking, oh my God, we just played Baker Mayfield and lost on the road. Then we lost on the road to the Jets, not even in New York, in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And then we go home and face Antonio Pierce, who, they have Brock Bowers now. They still have Devontae Adams. They still have Jacoby Myers. And then Antonio Pierce, if it was a fight between the two head coaches, probably, would beat up Sean Payton.
Yeah, and I think that the Raiders are going to sweep this series. I think actually everybody in this division are going to sweep the Broncos because, like I mentioned, I think they're going to be the worst team in the NFL. Let's see if we can find a win in here. I don't think it's going to be against those pesky Raiders, even if it is in the Mile High.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there. And then we also have the Broncos 2-game homestand. They potentially find a win here against the Chargers?
Nope. Because the Chargers still have Gus the Bus and Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. I'm taking the Chargers in this one.
So who is the quarterback at this point? Because we're 0-6 now. Do we start the season with Stidham? Are they going to play Zach Wilson at all? Is it Bo Nix? Or does it even matter who the quarterback is?
Well, at this point, they're what, 0-6?
0-6.
0-6. Well, they're about to be 0 in a whole lot of things. So at this point, it doesn't matter who's starting for them. Maybe they find some Flackenheimer in free agency by then. But at this point, we might not even see Sean Payton coaching at this point.
Okay. And then Sean Payton goes to his student on Thursday Night Football. Dennis Allen with his Karen hips and waving way in New Orleans to face the Saints, but they are in the Superdome. Do you think anyone on the Broncos is better than Taysom Hill?
No, I don't, except for Pat Surtain maybe. But on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, who do they have? Javonte Williams will probably be hurt. I hate to say it, as much as I don't want him to be. Cortland Sutton, I don't care. This is going to be another icing on the cake. Just like we saw Russell Wilson embarrass them, we're going to see the Saints embarrass them as well. The Broncos fall to 0-7.
0-7 now, Broncos Nation. Don't cry. I said Broncos Nations. Wow, that's a lot of tears, but don't cry. Because you go back home, and this would be the point in the series where you may consider doing some things where instead of doing that, you should call a hotline and get the help you need. Because you host the Carolina Panthers at 0-7, at 4:25, and this is the moment where, if you're a Broncos fans, you're thinking about some things. And thankfully, mushrooms are legal in Denver, so you can go through that therapeutic. But if you didn't have the Nuggets or the Avalanche, things may be looking very dark for the society of Denver.
See, in this part, I do have a heart.
You do have a heart?
I have a heart. It's about 3 sizes too big after I watched the Grinch play. And I see the Tepper. I think of Tepperville. I'm like, okay, well, David Tepper, he's terrible. Bryce Young, hopefully he's better this year. They did get Deontay Johnson. They got Adam Thielen. Surely they can beat the Panthers, right? Except for this time, they don't beat the Panthers. Except for they fall to 0-8 in this game. And you think, how do they lose to the Panthers? Well, the Broncos are the worst team in the NFL at this point. They're even worse than Tepperville. That's crazy. The mile high, the mile, oh boy.
The mile, oh boy. And then it doesn't get better because after that, you have a 2-game road trip starting in Baltimore. Need I say more?
Yeah, no, we can. Yeah.
And Kansas City?
No.
KC?
Well, let's see. They had, a full season of not beating them? Yeah, we can continue that.
They host the Falcons. Classic Kirk Cousins choke job. It's at 4:00 though, and it's not on prime time, so probably not.
I can't bet against Kirk.
And then 0-11 at this point, and then you go to Las Vegas.
This is a game that maybe they win, but I'm heartless. Yeah, I'm heartless.
Do they even get a tie in this? God.
I don't know.
No tie? Like, you can't even give them a tie versus Carolina?
Yeah, I could, but I won't.
You won't? Okay.
Fuck them.
Damn.
The Raiders, that's a winnable game, potentially, for them.
Okay.
But not in this simulation.
No. They have Brock Bowers. How could
they
you
have
say
Brock
that?
Bowers, and they have Antonio Pierce, and they have the mustache.
And Max. We have Denver hosting Cleveland, but it's in December.
Ooh. Well, if I had a heart, this is a winnable game, potentially. Potentially see them with, 1 to 2 wins at this point. But not in this simulation, because this is the Brickyard podcast. The documents are open. And they lose to the Browns? That's crazy.
The Colts.
Nah. Not with AR-15.
Not with AR. Not with Joe Flacco, who's also on the Colts. So, yeah, the Broncos aren't getting him in free agency because he's in Indy. And then we have the Chargers again in SoFi. Winnable game.
Okay. This is when I need to go back. This is when I come back down to earth for a second. I love the Chargers, right? Well, I shouldn't say I love the Chargers. The Chargers I have a heart for.
Because
I see their fans, they go through a lot of pain. Partly because they're Chargers fans. But I also know how the Chargers work. And as much as I want to say that the Broncos are going to go winless, only 2 teams in history have gone winless, and their roster was, slightly worse. I'm actually going to pick them to beat the Chargers here. This is a playoff push. The Chargers are probably going to be right in the mix, and then they're going to lose to the Broncos. I actually think the Broncos win this game.
Okay. Congratulations, Broncos fans. You are 1-15 now. And there's no good quarterbacks next draft. Congratulations. And then you face the Bengals in a TBD game.
A TBD game.
The best one.
That's the worst game you want to face Joe Burrow. So, yeah, Joe Burrow. By then, he's undefeated.
Undefeated in December, Joe Burrow.
Undefeated in yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then you finish with the Chiefs, who may be resting everybody.
That's potentially a winnable game.
A tie.
But not in this simulation.
All right, so the Broncos are 1-16.
Ouch, that sucks. Sucks to be them. Now, if I were to temper my expectation, I think anywhere between 1 and 4 wins is fair for them. I know that there are Broncos fans out there who are like, oh, but we have Cortland Sutton, we have Javonte Williams, and Bo Nix. Maybe he'll be a nice golfer someday. But I see potentially a win against the Panthers. Maybe they beat the Chargers once. Maybe they beat the Raiders once. And maybe we see a Browns win. But I do realistically see them being the worst team in the AFC. I do think the Patriots might actually be better than them. The only thing that they have going for them is potentially Sean Payton. Is he a good coach? We'll see. And then...
Will he play, though?
Sean Payton?
Yeah.
Probably not. So... I really think that they're going to be the worst team in the AFC. Their quarterback situation is worse, at least for the Patriots, which I think are the only other contestant for the worst team, right? None of the teams in the AFC North, all of those teams are loaded. The AFC West, every other team at least has a solid quarterback. AFC South, everybody else has at least somewhat of a quarterback. And then you go into the AFC East, it's just the Patriots, but they still have Jacoby Brissett, who's a fine quarterback. He can at least win them 4 or 5 games. But this,
Zappy, yeah, he's better than Stidham. And
Bo Nix, Jared Stidham, and Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, one of the biggest busts in NFL history. This is not crazy. I'm sorry. 1-16 maybe. But the Broncos being the worst team, this is the moral of the story. The Broncos are the worst.
all right, well, Broncos country, your ride is not going very far next year. Let's move over to a team that may win some games in the Kansas City Chiefs here. To sum them up, they got scarier. You get Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Rashee Rice if he's on the field with after all of his off the field issues. I think you'll be really good next year. You traded away one of your best corners, but I think the Chiefs will definitely be in contention for a 3-peat, and I think they'll be better than they were last year because, they won't have the curse of Kadarius Toney, and Hollywood Brown is a fine too, especially for a Kansas City Chiefs team that already has Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. I think that'll be a dangerous 3-headed monster, and then you still have Pacheco on that team being angry at the ground.
And they also have Xavier Worthy, the fastest player in the draft.
Yeah, fastest player in the draft. A lot of people don't like the Xavier Worthy take because they said, hey, man, he was a third-round prospect before he traded with them. Salty Bills fans, I think, though.
Okay, well, the Bills fans are idiots, and the Chiefs find a way.
Yeah.
Let's dive into it because this is a team that potentially could be the first team in NFL history to have a 3-peat. Let's see how their record fares.
All right.
They start the season, the entire NFL season, actually. They face the Ravens, keeping in mind that Lamar Jackson is 1-4 against them in his career. Who do you think wins this game?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson saw Patrick Mahomes and talked about how he gets nervous before playing Patrick Mahomes. So I think the Chiefs will win this one. They'll see what happened last year versus the Detroit Lions, and they'll be like, we really don't want to repeat that. We have some young, hungry receivers, so I think the Chiefs get the W in that one.
All right. And then they get no breaks there as the very next game, they go out and face the Bengals, but this time at Arrowhead.
Yeah, they face the Bengals in September. The Bengals are not the Bengals until mid-October. I think the NFL is doing this just to boost Patrick Mahomes. I think this is part of why the NFL is rigged. They're giving Patrick Mahomes a Bengals team that they know struggles in September. This is buffoonery. I smell conspiracy theory, so I think the Chiefs win.
All right. And then the very next week, they face the Falcons and Kirk Cousins. This is a primetime game.
A primetime game? Ugh, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the Chiefs moves to 3-0.
All right. And then they are lucky enough to go up to SoFi, face Gus the Bus and the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh in SoFi. And this is also, this is a 4:00 game.
Do the Chiefs have an offense?
Some may say.
Okay. Yeah, I think they'll win this.
Okay. And then they face your friend of the show, the Saints, on Monday Night Football.
My friend of the show, the Saints. This is embarrassing that this is a Monday Night Football matchup. I don't understand what the NFL is doing. Everyone complains about how bad Monday Night Football is. You can tell Peyton Manning gets frustrated with some of these games. I guess they're making more time where Eli can just make jokes about Peyton's forehead in this game and having as many Super Bowls about him, but this is embarrassing.
Yeah, I agree.
We may see Theo Vaughn on the Manning cast, so that'd be the only saving grace.
Yeah.
Was that week 5 or 4?
That was week 5. But then they get a little bit of rest. Chances are they'll beat the bye week. Odd makers believe. And then they go to Levi Stadium and they have a Super Bowl rematch against the Niners.
I think they lose this game. Typically it means more to the team that lost the Super Bowl. I think the Niners with Christian McCaffrey would generally beat the Chiefs in a regular season game. So I will take the Niners.
All right. And then the very next week, they go and face the Raiders in Vegas.
In Vegas, I'll take the Raiders. No, they already lost to the San Francisco 49ers. Don't pick Patrick Mahomes to lose 2 games in a row, so I'll have them go now 6-1.
All right. And then on Monday Night Football, they face Baker Mayfield and those pesky Bucks.
on Monday Night Football. Where is it?
This is in Arrowhead.
In Arrowhead? Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs.
All right. Then they get a layup the next game, maybe the biggest layup in all of the NFL. They face Bo Nix and his 35-year-old ass in Arrowhead at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, do the Chiefs have a team?
Some may say.
Okay, I'll pick them to win then.
All right. There we go. I know where this is going. Very next game, they have to go all the way up into the frigid weather of Buffalo, New York, and face off against those pesky Bills, who in the regular season has been good against the Chiefs.
Yeah, they don't have receivers, right?
Well, they have DJ Chark, I heard.
DJ Shark. Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs.
Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, the Bills, if they wanted to beat the Chiefs, it was last year and they got worse. So I will pick the Chiefs because they got better.
That's good logic.
Yeah, one plus one, I think, equals 2.
Yeah.
3, I don't know. I think 10 minus 8, which was the Bills offseason, equals 2. Okay.
Mathematicians are a fan of the show.
All right. 9-1.
And then they have to trek all the way down to the sewers of Tepperville and face off against those pesky Panthers with the addition of Deontay Johnson.
They have a loss in here somewhere, so I still have to pick the Chiefs to win, though.
I was gonna say don't take them losing to the Panthers. I think hell would freeze over first. But I know you predicted earlier that maybe there's a loss in there at some point. Well, they have one of the first Friday games. This is a Black Friday game at home against those pesky Raiders.
Yeah, they lost the Christmas game last year, so I think this is a familiar situation. So I will pick the Raiders to win this game, and Chiefs go to 10-2.
All right. And then they host the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. It feels like every game is a primetime game.
Yeah, they have receivers and an offense. The Chargers don't, so I'll pick the Chiefs.
All right. Just wait till I go over the Chargers. And then we got the Chiefs and Browns next.
The Chiefs and Browns. Is this in Cleveland?
Yep.
I will pick the Browns to win that game. I think that Chiefs, they usually have a couple losses where you kind of scratch your head at. So I will pick the Chiefs to lose that one.
All right. And then they host the Texans.
The Texans. Yeah, I think CJ Stroud is proud, and he's going to march into Arrowhead, beat Patrick Mahomes head to head. I think it'll be a crazy game, but give me the Texans in that one.
All right. And then they have a Wednesday game on Christmas Day against
Wednesday.
Yeah, against
they played Friday, they played Sunday, they played Monday, and now they play Wednesday.
They play 6 days this year.
6 days?
Yeah.
They play Saturday too?
Yeah. Yeah, the only day they don't face is Tuesday. It's crazy. And then the last 2 games of the season, they have the Christmas game against those pesky Steelers and Russell Wilson.
I'm sorry. I know Steelers Nation, you want to weld. Not on Christmas.
No. And then they have a flex game. Potentially, we might see the backup for the Chiefs, whoever that is. I know it used to be Chet Enny. He retired. Now it's God only knows who.
Against the Broncos?
Yeah, against the Broncos. Kadarius Toney might be taking over at quarterback. Who knows? All I know is that it won't really matter.
Yeah, 13-4 for the Chiefs. I think that's very generous. I think they'll be better than they were last year. And last year, this show picked the Chiefs to go 11-6. Everyone was like, "You're crazy. The Chiefs aren't going 11-6." And guess what happened? The Chiefs went 11-6.
They went 11-6, and now you're saying they go 13-4. I think the only team in the AFC who will compete with them for that first overall is going to be the Texans.
Texans.
I think that the Ravens and the Bengals should be in the mix for it because I think they're both great teams, but they're going to beat up on each other. I think the Texans and the Chiefs are in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, the Bengals are perpetual 3rd seeds. Let's be honest.
The who?
The Bengals, they're like a perpetual 3rd seed.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I see that.
So yeah, we have the Chiefs there. After that, we have the formerly Wales Vagina Chargers. They are now the LA Chargers. They are the kind of bastardized stepchild to the Rams at this point. Thoughts on the Chargers this season?
You are a hater of the Chargers. I think you like to see
realistic.
No, I think you're a hater. What have they done? Well, they drafted 2 wide receivers. They signed DJ Chark. I know DJ Chark does not move that much for you. They also addressed their offensive line. And let's remember how Jim Harbaugh drafted that 49ers team a decade before after he had spent time at Stanford. He hit on a lot of those players in that draft, and they ended up being better than we expected. I think they're still not going to make the playoffs, but I think 8-9, 9-8, I think is a realistic expectation for the Chargers.
Yeah, congrats. You're paying your quarterback $200 million to have a losing record. Good for you.
That's for the Chargers to figure out. But I do think that they're going to be right around that echelons.
Okay. Yes. So we have the Chargers here, and they start out game one versus those pesky Raiders at 4:05 in LA. But the problem with the Chargers, and probably my biggest problem, is they don't have a home field advantage.
Yeah, but they haven't been that bad at home since moving to LA. I think that they're going to ultimately split with the Raiders. Because of the new coaching regime and everything here, I'm going to pick them to lose to the Raiders now and win against the Raiders later.
All right. So they lose to the Raiders, and then they have to trek down to Tepperville in Carolina, team that has, Adam Thielen there, got Deontay Johnson, Chuba Hubbard.
See, at this point, there's going to be a name that comes out of the LA camp. You're going to be like, ooh, I didn't even think that they were going to draft this guy. Ladd McConkey. Remember his name. Ladd McConkey, second round pick for them. I think he's going to be pretty good. He has a Puka Nacua comparison. We'll see if he becomes Puka Nacua. I think he's going to be pretty good.
Okay.
So I think they beat the Panthers.
You think they beat the Panthers? Okay. And then they go up to Pittsburgh after coming from Carolina.
I think they can beat the Steelers. I think that's fair.
Really?
Yes. I think they can beat the Steelers.
All right.
Russell Wilson. Do you remember how bad Russell Wilson was in Denver? I think it's fair that he's as Arthur Smith is his offensive coordinator. I think I give the Chargers a win against them.
Okay. So 2-1. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then they face off at home against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Justin Herbert has lost 4 straight games against Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think he's going to beat them this time around. I'm realistic. I am fair with the Chargers, but they are not going to beat the Chiefs this year.
All right. So they are 2-2, and then they go to Denver. Is it Bo Nix? Is it Zach Wilson? Is it Stidham? Is it Sean Payton playing quarterback? We don't know.
Doesn't matter. Broncos, you saw the video. They went 1-16. They're not the Broncos are lucky enough, or I should say the Chargers are lucky enough that they get to face them twice. So they will at least win 2 games.
All right. So shocking the entire world, the Broncos are 3-2, and then they go on a second game on the road to Arizona versus Marvin Harrison.
This is a game I do see them losing. I think that Arizona, Kyler Murray, can he get hot against a Chargers team that's figuring themselves out? Marvin Harrison, they're going to be a tough team to defend. I think I see the Cardinals winning there.
All right. And then Taysom Hill comes to town with the Saints to LA.
Yeah, I've been too nice to the Saints. The Saints are garbage. I'm going to give the Chargers, all they need is Gus the Bus and Ladd McConkey, and they'll be okay.
All right. And then they host the Cincinnati Bengals. No, that's not the next game. They host the Cleveland Browns in November, or they go to Cleveland to face the Browns.
I think it's fair to say, I think Jim Harbaugh is a fine coach, but I think Kevin Stefanski is a great coach. This Browns team, they find a way. They have a really tough defense. I think they should be able to shut down the Chargers. I'll be fair. I'll say the Browns win that game.
Wow, comments are going to go wild. He just said Kevin Stefanski is better than Jim Harbaugh. Can you believe it? And then after the Bengals, they host the Ravens.
Wait, what? No. They face the Titans.
Yeah, the Titans, right? Yeah.
The Titans, I think they can beat the Titans. I think by then, Jim Harbaugh is starting to get the momentum there. I think that's a winnable game for them. I'll take them beating the Titans.
Okay. So Will Levis's tape is not enough to get him over the Chargers in that one. And then they host the Bengals and the Ravens in a 3-game homestand.
Yeah, I think those are 2 games that they struggle against. I don't know if they can win either. Maybe the Ravens game just because of that brotherly rivalry. But ultimately, I'll say they lose both those games.
Both of them. All right. So they drop to 5-6, and then they go to Atlanta. Sorry, Chargers. This is at 1:00.
I think they can still beat the Falcons.
Okay.
Oh, please. You're acting as if Raheem Morris is going to be out of his mind as a head. I think the Chargers can win that game.
Okay, so they are
Oh no, they can't
6
beat
and 6
Kirk Cousins. Come on.
at 1 o'clock. Kirk
Oh my
Cousins
God,
is
you
an
act
MVP.
like he's a god. He's not.
He's and not on prime time, but at 1 o'clock, Kirk Cousins is an MVP.
Well, I can say Justin Herbert's just about the same. Look at his numbers.
Yeah, look at his numbers. And then after that, they go to Kansas City to face the Chiefs.
I was realistic. I said they're not going to beat the Chiefs this season, and I don't think that happens again this year either. I think the Chiefs win.
All right, so they drop to 6 and 7, and then they host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I think they beat the Buccaneers in this case.
Okay,
In SoFi.
so they are 500 now at 7 and 7, and then they host the Broncos. Is it Bo Nix? Is it Sean Payton? Is it Jarrett Stidham? Is it
It's-
Zach Wilson?
And this is where they really break their heart. If they were to win down the stretch, chances are they could make the playoffs. Because I think then you said they were what, 7 and 7?
7 and 7, yeah.
So if they went out, they probably make the playoffs potentially. Unfortunately, the Broncos win their only game of the season because the Chargers, like they do with their friends, they break their hearts, and I think that they beat the Broncos. The Broncos beat them.
And then finishing up the year with 2 road games, going to New England in December.
I think they beat the Patriots in this case.
Okay. And then they are 8 and 8, and then you said they beat the Raiders in the last regular season game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they're 8, and then if they lose that game, right around where I expect them to be, 8 and 9, 9 and 8. Whether they're one or the other, I think that's fair for the Chargers. You have a better you've improved at head coach. I think that your running back situation, I think they're maybe a little bit more dynamic than they were before. Austin Eckler's out the building. They got rid of some of those tough contracts, and their defense should perform better to this point because, let's be honest, they underperformed under Brandon Staley. I think Jim Harbaugh is able to get more out of his players than Brandon Staley. And I do think that some of the weapons they drafted do look promising. So I think they'll be better than what you expect, but I think that they're still going to be 8 and 9, 9 and 8.
Yeah, 8 and 9, 9 and 8. So right there, definitely a Chargers record. But yeah, so Chargers are at 9 and 8. Broncos are at 13 and 4. Or Broncos, not the Chiefs are at 13 and 4.
Definitely not the
And
Broncos.
then the Broncos are at 1 and 16.
Yes, which is very appropriate. Now we have the Las Vegas Raiders entering the offseason. We said, please hire Antonio Pierce. Everybody wants him. There was rumors of a number of different teams that are head coaches that they were interested in, ended up staying in-house. And then part of the things they did also was they moved on from Josh Jacobs and they brought in Gardner Minshew rather than Aiden O'Connell. What do you think about the Raiders?
Yeah, the Raiders are going to be a tough, gritty team here. If Gardner Minshew is their quarterback, I definitely think he's someone who can bring you close to the playoffs, similarly to how he played in Indianapolis. And while you don't have Josh Jacobs there, you have Brock Bowers at tight end, who's definitely way better than anyone at tight end in Indianapolis. And then you have arguably a top 5 wide receiver in the league in Devontae Adams, and you still have Jacoby Myers there. And you have Max Crosby on that team. So I think you're going to be tough. You're going to be gritty, but you're still going to be in that like 8 to 10 win range.
Okay, similar to the Chargers then.
Yeah.
Which is, funny enough, who they start the season against, which in my prediction, I had the Chargers losing to the Raiders. You think the Raiders win at SoFi week 1?
Yeah, I definitely think they win, and that is a home field advantage game. I think there'll be more Raiders fans than Chargers fans there. Oh, wait, the Chargers don't have fans.
And then we go to Baltimore against the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens.
Yeah, go to Baltimore against the Ravens. I do think that's a game that the Ravens win. Lamar Jackson's kind of elite in September, so I'll give the Ravens the W there.
All right. And then the Raiders host Tepperville and the Carolina Panthers with the newly added Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, so that should be a bloodbath there. I think the Raiders take care of business and wrap it up with the Panthers.
And then a game that's expected to be super gritty, might actually be a really fun game to watch. We have Raiders and Browns.
Raiders and Browns. Where is that?
In Vegas.
In Vegas? I think since it's in Vegas, I'll pick the Raiders to win that game. You're still reacclimating Deshaun Watson after he's had to be reacclimated to being reacclimated. So we'll see at what stage of being reacclimated he is at in that game. And I think the Raiders take advantage.
And then following that momentum, they go to the Mile High against the Mile Bad Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I think they start 4-1, get another win versus those Denver Broncos, whoever may be at quarterback. We don't know.
All right. And then the Steelers come to town in Vegas for a 4:00 matchup on a Sunday.
Yeah, I'll take the Steelers in that game. Steelers offense, I mean, you had Kenny Pickett last year, and you were able to have production. Najee Harris is coming in better shape. Then you still have a loaded defense. You have Patrick Queen on that defense, who you're able to add Kevin Porter Jr. and TJ Watt there.
Beautiful. And then very next week at 4:00, they face the LA Rams.
The LA Rams
in SoFi.
In SoFi. Yeah, I think that'll be another game where it's kind of split fans there, but I will take the Eileen Raiders in that game. I think that's just a tough, gritty game that they'll be able to pull out. Sometimes the Rams start a little bit slow, so I'll take the Raiders.
All right. And then kind of have a tough stretch ahead for them. They face the Chiefs in Vegas.
Yeah, and I had the Chiefs winning that game and the Raiders winning the second one, so I'll stick with that. And then Raiders go to 6-3.
All right, and then they face the Bengals in beginning of November, 1:00 game in Cincinnati.
Yeah, Joe Burrow undefeated in November and December, so I'll take the Bengals in that game.
All right, and then they go to Miami at 1:00 the following week.
Do they have a winning record?
It looks like they do.
Yeah, so I think they'll beat the Miami Dolphins.
All right. And then they host the Mile High Broncos.
Yeah, I'll have them beating the Broncos in that game.
Okay. And then you said they beat the Chiefs the following week on Friday Night Football.
Friday Night Football. Congratulations.
And then they go to Tampa to face the Buccaneers.
Yeah, they've been on a hot stretch there, have another loss in there somewhere. So I'll have them losing that game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right. And then, Monday Night Football, they host Kirk Cousins. The Falcons.
It's on prime time, so unfortunately I have to go with the Raiders in this game.
Okay. And then 4:25 the following week, they host your friends of the show, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll actually go with the Jaguars in this game. I think the Jaguars will be fighting for a little bit more than the Raiders. It'll be an important wild card matchup, and I just have to go with the better quarterback matchup because I know if the Jaguars lose this game, Jaguars fans are going to be like, oh, why didn't we just Jaguars fan is going to be like, oh, why didn't we keep Gardner Minshew? And why'd we have to draft Trevor Lawrence? So I think this game actually means something to Trevor.
Fair enough. And then they go to New Orleans in loud Mercedes-Benz Stadium and face the Saints at 1:00.
Yeah, I think they win that game versus the Saints.
They should. And then they end the season with the friends of the show, the LA Chargers.
LA Chargers, yeah. You had the Chargers winning that game, so I will begrudgingly stick with that and have the Raiders finishing 10-7.
Nice. All right, so that's the case. They're probably making the playoffs.
Yeah, they'll be in that conversation for the playoffs. We'll see. It'll definitely come down to matchups. It could be the Jaguars, and I think that Jaguars-Raiders game is actually going to be a very important game for both teams, and it could be the difference in one of those teams making it to the playoffs. So I think that'll be a very underrated game at the end of the season to circle on your calendar.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I like the way this shakes out. I think that's pretty accurate with just about everybody that we selected.
Yeah, so we have the Chiefs finishing at 13-4, the Raiders at 10-7, the Chargers at 9-8, and then the Denver Broncos rounding it out, really overachieving in this record. Don't know what you were thinking, but they made it all the way to 1-16. Congratulations to the Denver Broncos.
They found a way to win any way they can.
They found a way to win any way they can, and we're about to go over a division that typically has a lot of winners, whether it's the San Francisco 49ers, the Rams, the Cardinals, or the Seattle Seahawks. All of these teams, except for the Cardinals, have found themselves in the playoffs, and the Cardinals found themselves in a NFC championship game. But let's start kind of with the bad in this division. Team that finished last over the past few years, the Arizona Cardinals. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the Cardinals?
Well, last year, they were one of those teams that I would say were a good, bad team in the beginning half of the season, where they lost a lot of close games, but towards the end of the season, they did start to unravel. For a large portion of the season, they didn't have Kyler Murray, and they didn't have great weapons. Hollywood Brown left the building, and now they replaced him with Maserati Marv. However, who else is around him? We don't know. So the Cardinals, offensively, they should struggle a little bit. Their defense starting to come together very slowly. I think that they're in the right direction, so I think they'll be better than 4-13, but I don't think that they're anywhere near competing compared to the other teams in this division. So I think my projection here, they're going to be anywhere between 5 and 7 wins.
5 and 7 wins. Okay. Yeah. So let's see how that shakes out, because they get the gift in week 1 that is playing up against the Buffalo Bills.
Is this a primetime game?
No, it's at 1:00.
I'm going to be nice to the Bills. I'll give the Bills the win here.
Okay.
They should win this game.
They should win this game. And yeah, this game like just reminds me of like the war with Hopkins and Stephon Diggs, which was one of the greatest NFL games we've seen. But you have the Bills winning that game, and then it doesn't get any easier because you go back home to Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale area to play the Rams.
Yep. I think that with the Rams, they're going to probably split with them at one point. I believe they face pretty closely next to each other. I'll take them beating them in Arizona and then losing to them in SoFi.
All right. And then after that, they host the Detroit Lions. Hold on to your kneecaps, boys.
Hold on to your kneecaps. Might be in attendance for this game potentially. The Detroit Lions are on a mission this year. We know that. We went over the NFC North. We know that they might potentially be the 1 seed. And I don't think that these pesky birds are going to get in their way. So I'm going to take the Lions winning this game.
Lions winning that game. And then after that, they are hosting Jaden McDaniels and the Raiders with Dan Quinn and his half-retired roster coming to town. And Cliff Kingsbury, potential revenge game.
I see a revenge game for those pesky Cardinals. They couldn't beat the Bills. They couldn't beat the Lions, but they sure could beat the Commanders. And with that revenge game, a Geoff Kingsbury potentially shutting down that Commanders offense.
All right. And then after that, they go to San Francisco to the Gene Stadium to face Christian McCaffrey and the Cardinals.
Against the Gene. Well, yeah, they're not going to beat the 49ers once this season. So, yeah, we know that already.
All right, so that puts them at 2-3 there, and then they go to Lambeau Field. Where's the love at in Lambeau to face the Green Bay Packers?
You know, the Black Eyed Peas once asked, "Where is the love?" Well, last year we found the love. We found out that it was in Lambeau, and we are big Jordan Love enthusiasts on this show. Friend of the show, I got to pick the Lovebirds. I'm going to pick the Packers in this case, or should I say the Love Cheese, the Love Packer? I don't know. Find a joke there.
Yeah, find a joke there. How could you pick against Luke Musgrave? I mean,
couldn't be me.
Dear God. And then after that, they face off against the Chargers. We picked this game before. You just said this is a game you felt like the Chargers would lose.
That's fair. I think they would. Chargers, games that they shouldn't lose, they lose. So I think this is a game. The Birds, Kyler Murray has a Kyler Murray game.
All right. So Cardinals are kind of cardinaling right now, and they're at 3-4. Then they go to Miami to face the Dolphins.
What's the record?
3-4.
Okay. They lose this game.
All right. They move to 3-5 there, starting to question themselves a little bit and what the meaning of life is. And then after that, they host the Chicago Bears, and some may just say a taller Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams.
A taller, more feminine Kyler Murray. I think when we did this preview that we picked the Bears to win this game. So with the continuity, the Bears, who are the better team, beat them.
Damn. Can't beat the quarterback with nail polish there. Congratulations, Caleb Williams, for picking up another win in your rookie campaign. And then conspiracy theorist Aaron Rodgers comes to Arizona. What's in the sand? Why is the sun so hot?
Yeah, and I have to pick the Jets here and Aaron Rodgers. I think the tinfoil hat will do just fine in that hot, blaring Phoenix sun, and moving them down in panic against them.
Oh Jesus! So we are 3-7 right now, Arizona. What is happening right now? Is Kyler Murray even playing? We don't know. And then after that, we have a battle of the birds. Arizona versus Seattle in Seattle.
Yep. So this is a team I do think they can split with. I'm going to pick them to lose against the Seahawks here, and then beat them a couple weeks later.
Okay. So you just have them being buried right away.
Yep.
And then after that, it doesn't get well, I guess it gets easier. They go to Minnesota to face the Vikings, but we get probably one of the most entertaining receiver matchups.
Yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to see Maserati Marv versus the newly paid Justin Jefferson. I'm going to give the Vikings the win here. I do think the Cardinals fall in this game.
Wow. 3-9. You should take that shirt off, honestly. And then they go to Tepperville to face the Panthers. Surely they can beat.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I'm not an asshole. I'm not an asshole. Please. I have a heart. Anybody can beat Tepperville.
All right. So now they are 4-9, going to LA to face the Rams. You said they would split with the Rams. Do you still feel like that?
Yeah, I think they can still beat the Rams.
All right. So now they are well, you said they would split with the Rams, beat them earlier in the year. So do you have the Rams winning this one?
Yep.
All right. And then they finished the year off with the San Francisco 49ers.
San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, they can't beat the 49ers.
In Arizona. So that would have them with 4 wins.
4 wins.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that they're going to be closer to 5-12 and 6-11. I think that I believe somewhere along here they face like the Patriots and like the AFC East. I have them beating. I think they can beat the Patriots. I think they can beat potentially the Bills. Maybe I was too kind of the Bills back there. But I think like 5-12, 6-11. They still have a lot of growth to do. They need a second receiver. They need to move off of James Conner eventually.
Yeah, we missed the I missed the Patriots game. Sorry. So they would be 5-12.
5-12. I think 5-12 is fair. I think potentially 6-11, but I don't see them being above really anybody else in that division except maybe the Seahawks, barring injury. So I'll take the Seahawks. I'll take the Cardinals at 5-12. I do think they improve a little bit with Maserati Marv, but I just don't think they're ready yet.
Okay, and then let's move to the Rams. Currently, with the Rams, kind of think about Aaron Donald retiring. I think the defense will take a step back. However, I think the offense is still on the rise. We get Puka Nacua in his second season, still taking over for Cooper Kupp, and he's still very much involved in the offense. And then we'll have a full season, hopefully, with their running back staying healthy. So I think while their defense does take a step back, I still think their offense will be high flying, and this could potentially be Matthew Stafford's last year.
Potentially. Well, he gets to start his last season against his former team in Detroit on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I think the Lions win this game. I think they were sick of hearing the noise where like, oh, the Rams should have won that game. Oh, well, if the Rams won that game, they could have gotten to the Super Bowl. It's like on and on and on. Hold on to your kneecaps, boys. Lions are coming to town. I think they lose that game.
All right. And then they go all the way to State Farm Stadium and face the Cardinals in week 2.
And then you had the Cardinals winning that game, so I'll stick with that. And they start 0-2.
All right. And then they go to, I should say they host the 49ers in SoFi.
They host the 49ers in SoFi. I think that's a game that they can win. I know Sean McVay is kind of owned by Kyle Shanahan, but that's turned a little bit over the past few years. And I think the 49ers have that Super Bowl hangover, could be dealing with a lot of injuries this year. So I will take the Rams in that one.
All right. And then they go to Soldier Field. They take on nail polish quarterback Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. By then, potentially the best Bears quarterback of all time.
Yeah, so I think the best Bears quarterback of all time will win that game. Chicago's a tough place to play, so I will pick the Bears to win that game.
All right. And then following that, they go and host the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love.
Yeah, I think the Packers typically start out slow. You're 1-3 right now. Kind of got to pull yourself out of a slump. So I will situationally pick the Rams to win.
All right. And then they have a bye week. They take a little bit of rest, maybe
Hopefully they
needed.
win.
Yeah, I think, at this point it's 50-50 or maybe less. But then they go back, 4 o'clock game against the Raiders. They host the Raiders.
They host the Raiders. Yeah, I picked the Raiders to win this game in the previous one, and that previous, I'll stick with that.
All right. Well, good luck for them is because their schedule gets a little bit easier down the stretch. They have a Thursday night football game against potentially Kid See Ghost, Sam Darnold, or JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I'll take the Rams to win that game. Just think they're better.
Yep. And then they go to Seattle.
I think they sweep the Seahawks this year.
I agree. And then by then they're what, 4-4?
4-4. We're coming up.
And then the ultimate balance of the NFL, the Dolphins only beat losing teams. They can't beat winning teams. What happens when they face a team that's 4-4?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I will go with a tie in that game. Because the Dolphins, it's 4-4, so we have to have a tie in here somewhere. And I think this could be a game that goes to overtime and maybe a game where a team that has the ball last. But Stafford and Tua just can't stop turning the ball over, so I'll go with a tie.
A tie. So now they are perfectly balanced at 4-4-1.
Yeah, the Dolphins have to remain balanced. I mean, it's a 500 team, not quite a winning team, not quite a losing team, so had to do it.
Had to do it. Well, then they go up to the brisk, cold New England air against Drake May and those pesky Patriots.
Yeah, they should beat the Patriots for sure.
For sure. And then the following week, there is a Sunday night game against Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'll go with the Rams in this one. Is it in Philadelphia or SoFi?
SoFi.
Yeah, I'll go with the Rams in this one.
Okay. And then the following week, they go to the loud Mercedes-Benz Stadium and face the Saints.
I'll go with the Rams in this one as well.
All right. I think I know the next direction you're having here. 4 o'clock game in SoFi, taking on Josh Allen and the Bills.
Yeah, I have the Rams in this one for sure. Do the Bills have a winning record at this point? We don't know.
We don't know. Well, then they have a short week. They go to Levi Stadium, the Gene Stadium, earlier referred to, and they take on the 49ers, Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, I think the Niners are pretty banged up at this point, but it's a division rivalry. I'll take the Niners in this one. I'll have them splitting, so 7-5-1 currently.
All right. Well, that 7-5-1 record treks their way not to New York, but to New Jersey to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Jets.
I will go with the hippie in this game and pick Aaron Rodgers and the Jets to win because he's just better than Stafford.
All right. Well, lucky for them, they end the season to be determined at home against the Cardinals.
At home against the Cardinals, and yeah, I think they win that home game versus the Cardinals.
All right. And then they get another flex game, another to be determined. They host those pesky Seahawks.
Those pesky Seahawks, yeah, I have them sweeping the Seahawks there. So I will take them to win that game as well.
All right. And that is all.
All right. So I have them finishing 10. Yeah. I have them finishing 9-7-1.
9-7-1. Beautiful. That's actually kind of where I would have them too. I think losing Aaron Donald, maybe they take a step back, but overall their offense, Puka Nacua, second year in the league. Not only that, I think their running backs are fantastic too. So I think their offense will be a lot better. So yeah.
All right. And then after that, we have your childhood heroes, the Legion of Boom, the Seattle Seahawks. What are your thoughts on the Seahawks this year?
Honestly, of all the teams we've talked about today, this is a team that I don't know. I mean, genuinely, their quarterback situation, if I want to bully the Seahawks, I feel like it's got to be their quarterback situation, surely, right? They have Geno Smith, who we love and adore, friend of the show, but then it's also Drew Lock, a lot of question marks, no Pete Carroll anymore, change of regime. Typically, those regime changes don't always fare well for that team. They still have DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett is yet another year older, and that defense, they have nice pieces, but will they still be elite? I don't know. So I think 6-11 to 8-9 is their record.
All right, so we will see what happens in this game. Kind of like how we'll see week to week on what happens with DK Metcalf. And starting out, thankfully they get to play the Denver Broncos.
Absolutely. And this is a game where the Seahawks start off hot and they beat those pesky Broncos.
All right, so they start off hot. They beat who knows who's at quarterback. And then they go to New England and face the Patriots. Interesting game.
Very interesting game. Yeah, I mean, Geno Smith, Drake May, Jacoby Brissett, whoever it is, they should beat the Patriots.
They should beat the Patriots. Okay, so you have them winning that one?
Yeah.
All right, so they start out hot, coming out blazing 2-0, and then they host the Miami Dolphins with a winning record.
I might actually go against the norm here.
Oh.
I think the Dolphins, I don't think the Seahawks can. No, you know what? No. They're 2-0. They beat the Dolphins.
Yeah, they got Reek Woolen. They still got they got some good corners there. So yeah, that
Reek
makes
Woolen,
sense.
Devon Witherspoon. Yeah. So they're 2-0. Therefore, they have a winning record. Therefore, the Dolphins lose.
All right, so coming out hot, 3-0 for the Seattle Seahawks there. But that may all come to an end because they go to Detroit. Hold on to your kneecaps, boys.
They usually play the Lions tough. But that doesn't mean that they beat the Lions here. Lions are a new team. There's a new man in charge. Lions get the win. Losing their undefeated season to the point.
It's time to rewrite history, man. And then after that, coming off a loss, thankfully they get the Walt Jr. of the NFL coming to town and the New York Giants.
Boy, I don't know. Like we're almost running out of wins here, but at the same time, I can't pick Daniel Jones to win a game.
Yeah.
So I hope it's Danny DeVito playing. But in this case, if it is Daniel Jones, I had to pick the Seahawks.
Yeah, can't pick Daniel Jones. It defines who I am.
The only people I can bank on there is Brian Burns, Kevon Thibodeau, and Bobby Okereke.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got to stop DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba at this point.
And their corners.
They added some running back depth in the draft too. So honestly, I think the Seahawks could be quite frisky. And then they host the San Francisco 49ers.
I don't think they beat the 49ers.
All right. So that would drop them to 4-2 there, which they've kind of been hovering around most of the time. And then after that, they have to play the Falcons in Atlanta at 1:00.
1:00 Kirk. I mean, I can't bet against that guy.
Unless it's the Chargers.
Unless it's the Chargers.
And then they host the Buffalo Bills in Seattle at 4:05.
I just think at this point, the Seahawks, they started off hot. They start to temper off. I will take the Bills to beat them. Can they stop Josh Allen alone? I don't know.
All right. So you have them going 4-4 there. And then they take their talents down or they stay in Seattle against the Rams there.
I agree with you. I don't think they beat the Rams once this season, so I'm going to pick them to get swept by the 49ers and the Rams. Therefore, they lose this game.
All right. And then they go to the Jets, revenge game for Jamal Adams.
Yeah. Yeah, revenge game for Jamal Adams. Yeah, I'm going to pick the Jets in this game.
All right.
Aaron Rodgers is better than Geno Smith. Hot take.
Start out 4-1. Now you are 4-6.
Yikes.
Going to Arizona to play the Cardinals.
And I believe I had them splitting. I'm going to pick the Cardinals to win in this game. I believe I picked them winning the last game, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. So that would bump them to 5-6 there, starting to be respectable again. But it's December and you're paying those Packers, and where's the love?
I know exactly where the love is. It is in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm picking the Packers in this one.
And then after that, they play the Minnesota Vikings at home at 5-7.
See, I think they're going to be frisky. I think this is a winnable game for them, but it's also a losable game. I'll still pick them to win. I'll pick them to beat the Vikings.
Right. So they're 6-7, going to Chicago to play those Bears.
How about them Bears? I'm going to pick the Bears to win this one.
All right. So Bears win that one. And then they finish out the season versus the Rams.
I got to pick them to. I don't think they win that game.
All right. So finish out here, and Seattle Seahawks finish at 6-11.
That sounds about right. I think they got to figure out their quarterback situation. I think there's enough talent on offense that they're going to be frisky, and enough pieces on defense, especially with Bowie Mafe, Devon Witherspoon, and Reek Woolen. But at the same time, this is a team in rebuild. They don't have Pete Carroll anymore at the helm. What does their leadership look like? I think 6-11 is totally fair.
Yeah, I think 6-11. I think they have some more winnable games in there. This is pretty harsh, and I think this is the lowest it could be. But I think they could be closer to 8-9 or 9-8.
I think,
I think they have a better roster than a team like the Chargers. They're just in a tougher division.
yeah, they're in a tougher division for sure.
Okay, so far we have the Cardinals at 5-12, the Seahawks at 6-11, and the Rams at 9-7-8. Let's check in on Super Bowl hungover San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, so going into the season, right? Obviously, Kyle Shanahan forgot about overtime. Who knew? What do you think? How like last year? Obviously, they make the Super Bowl. Typically, teams like this don't go back to the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on the 49ers?
Yeah, I think the 49ers will probably win the division again this year because they're so much better than everyone else here. They still have one of the best defenses in the league. They still have Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey about to pay Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle there as well. So I still think they're probably going to win the division, but I think they're going to be a little bit banged up going into the playoffs and inevitably lose to Detroit again in the NFC title game rematch there. Or maybe they get upset by a team like the Bears in the second round.
That'd be cool. Well, first game of the season, ironically enough, Monday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers comes to town.
Aaron Rodgers comes to town. I do think the San Francisco 49ers win that game there. Aaron Rodgers is going to be his first game with the Jets, but I think the 49ers are a much better team still.
And it's Aaron Rodgers against the 49ers.
Yeah, not a great matchup there.
Then they face the Vikings in Minnesota.
They've had their trouble with the Minnesota Vikings, but I do think they're able to rebound and beat the Vikings.
All right. And then they face the Rams in SoFi.
I had the Rams winning that game, so I'll stick with that.
All right. So they beat the Rams there. And then
The Rams win.
yeah, the Rams win. Yep. So they lose their first game. Well, luckily for them, the following game, they host the New England Patriots.
They host the New England Patriots, and I think that's an absolute beat down. They probably win by 30.
Yep. And then they also, back-to-back weeks, they then host the Arizona Cardinals.
They host the Arizona Cardinals. I think they split with the Cardinals, but I'll go with them winning that game.
All right. And then Thursday Night Football, they head to Seattle.
Thursday Night Football, they head to Seattle. I'll have them. Think you had them splitting with the Seahawks, or did you have the Seahawks winning both games, or the 49ers winning both games?
I had the Niners winning both.
Okay, so I'll stick with that. We go to 5-1.
And then they go to they host the Kansas City Chiefs, which in the Chiefs preview you had them
Beating the Chiefs, so I'll stick with that. They move to 6-1, which is kind of similar to how if you're saying I'm crazy, this is similar to how Philadelphia started the season last year, 7-1. Then it went downhill from there.
Yeah. Well, then I know where this is going next. 4:00 game, I believe. Oh no, primetime game, Sunday Night Football. They bring Dallas Cowboys to town.
Death, taxes, and the annual stomping of the Dallas Cowboys by the San Francisco 49ers. And then Micah Parsons says, oh, it's we're not as far off as it looked, even though we lost by 40.
Yeah, totally. So at this point, they're what, 7-1?
7-1?
All right. Well, they go to Tampa Bay and they take on Baker Mayfield the following week.
That's just a game they'll lose, I feel like.
At this point, I mean, you look about it, they face the Chiefs and the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks. This is a game they fall flat, potentially.
Yeah, that's a game where after that, and then Micah Parsons will be like, see, they lost to Baker Mayfield. We're not that far off, even though Baker and Dak's not really that much of a difference.
Yeah. And then they host the Seahawks the following week.
They host the Seahawks. Yeah, I have them beating the Seahawks both games.
Yep. All right. And then they go to Lambeau the day before Thanksgiving and with the Packers in Green Bay.
I'll have the Packers winning that game. I think the Packers win. They're younger. Injuries are starting to creep up on the 49ers. Attrition starts to set in. I will go with the Packers.
All right. And then they go to Buffalo on Sunday Night Football to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, there's a stampede, but it's not the Buffalo Bills doing it. It's the San Francisco 49ers.
All right. And then the following week, they host Caleb Williams and the Bears.
Host Caleb Williams and the Bears. I think that's a game that the Bears can catch them off guard. Bears have an underrated defense. This is the first year that the Bears have a modern NFL offense. Give me the Bears in a potential playoff preview.
All right. And then following that, they have a short week and they host the LA Rams.
Short week, host the LA Rams. Had them splitting with the Rams. Don't see them losing too many games in a row, so I'll take them to beat the Rams.
All right. And then they face the Dolphins the following week in Miami. At this point, they do have a winning record.
So, yeah, I have to pick the San Francisco 49ers at that point. They move to 11-4.
And then they face the Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football.
I have to go with the Lions. Hold on to your kneecaps. Lions are out for blood, looking for revenge. Had the Lions winning that game in our Lions preview, so I will also pick the Lions in this one as well.
All right. And then Arizona, they end the season on a flex game to end the season with the Cardinals.
Yeah, so I'll have them winning that game, and they move to 12-5, which I think is a very good record for the Niners next year. I think
That's very fair.
you're not 13-4, you're not 14-3, nothing crazy, but you're a respectable 12-5. Chiefs were 11-6 last year, so I think that's right where they need to be. It's going to be in that 11 to 13 win range for the Niners.
I think that's totally appropriate. And especially, let's assume they don't have any injuries that they have, like, which is naturally that they do. I think that's totally fair. I would put them right around 11-6 to 13-4, and it's right around when we had them.
Perfect. So we have the 49ers at 12-5. We have the Rams at 9-7-1. You have the Seahawks at 6-11, and you have the Cardinals at 5-12. And then we have previewed the AFC West as well. Make sure you tune into those videos to go over everyone in the AFC West division. But most importantly,
Stay brick.